Hello and welcome back to the show. So I'm really excited for my guest today, Chris, because Chris is a serial entrepreneur and a podcast host as well. So Chris has been in the entrepreneur and business space in both recruiting and also in the cybersecurity space, so in the tech space as well, and is currently now looking into investing in commercial real estate and exploring the world of real estate as well. So Chris is also a very successful podcast host, and we're going to be digging into the benefits of starting your own podcast, right? So a lot of you guys are listening to this right now thinking, should I start my own show? Is there any benefit to this? So we're going to be digging into some of the benefits of that as well, and kind of what Chris has seen when it comes to podcasting and how that can help your business. But Chris, man, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for taking some time to join us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here. What a terrific introduction. Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I'm happy to share all my stories.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So before we get into anything, I would love for you to be able to just share a little bit about like who you are and kind of what your journey has looked like in business, right? Because it does look like if somebody's just looking at your social media pages or kind of your quote unquote resume, if you will, you've done a lot and you've been in a lot of different kind of industries, but they kind of all tie together. So I'd love for you to be able to kind of share a little bit about just your experience in business and kind of your different ventures.
Yeah. Oh, my adventures. I got a lot of adventures, but let's jump into it. I'll start. I usually start around like college time and stuff like that. So I went to community college and I went for business. Actually, I just started in business. I was like, I want to do something in business. I want to like own my own business. I want to be my own boss. Funny story. It was like I remember I was like in seventh. No, I was like 7 years old. This is first and second grade. And then I remember I was like in trouble for something. And just normal story. You get your kid, you're in trouble. And then I was like, I was like being sassy to the teacher. And I was like, I'm going to be the boss one day and then I won't ever be in trouble or something like this. And then the lady's like, you're always going to have a boss. And then I was like, maybe she's right. And I went over, I got picked up that day. I got picked up from my dad, and I went over to my dad. I'm like, Dad, is it true you always have a boss? And he's like, not if you are the boss. And I was like, yeah. And I like went over to the teacher. I was like, not if I am the boss, or whatever. So I was like, super immature, super childish. And I'll say today, after being an entrepreneur for about a decade at this point, yeah, it's not that you have like a boss if you run your own company, but it's definitely that you should treat people with respect all along the way, no matter who you are. And that's kind of grows in different types of things. So, while moving into your journey of being an entrepreneur and business and stuff like that, I recommend reading a lot of books and stuff like that. So, Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, a terrific book. The one thing that teaches you is like to think win instead of like a win lose scenario and stuff. Um, so yeah, when you have these types of mentalities and things like that, you're going to gravitate and meet other people that are beneficial. My story, while I was in school for business, I started getting into computer science and technical things. I was full time at San Francisco State. I transferred over from City College of in Sacramento, and CRC, and transferred over to San Francisco State University. And while I was there, I was also full time at City College of San Francisco. So I was full time at both of them, while also in a different club. But while I was there, I was taking cybersecurity courses. They were actually offering cybersecurity courses, and that's where I got really into that. And I was like, I want to do this. This is a lot of fun. And then my degree moved over to computer science, and then I got more into the technical side of things. And I've been working in cybersecurity for about a decade on the technical side of things. While doing so, um, I had different types of business and ideas and stuff, but nothing would really be pushed out until later. I then had a buddy reach out to me. He's like, "Hey, um, are you interested in doing recruiting? I can help you you can work for my company. I'll teach you how to be a recruiter." I don't know anything about recruiting. I was like, "Oh, so I just got to give people jobs and stuff like that." He's like, "Yeah, in cybersecurity. Okay, great. I know some people in cybersecurity." Absolutely not how it works. It's all about meeting people and stuff like that. So all the people, I was like, "Oh, I'll just get my friend a job. That'll be easy." And it's like, no, the clients want something very specific, and I have to go out there and meet them and stuff like that and go find people. So the question is like, how do I find these people? So I was utilizing LinkedIn heavily and stuff. And once I become very successful at reaching out to people, speaking to them, and having conversations with them, making them feel more comfortable, then I was able to say like, okay, maybe I can actually just start my own recruiting agency, and that's kind of how things kicked off there.
Yeah, man. So you've been, you always wanted to get into business, and I feel like that's for a lot of people kind of similar. Like
Mm.
they get one of that bug really young, and they want to get, they want to start their own business. They don't want to work for anybody. And then you realize kind of later on that it's not so much that you have a boss, but you want to treat people with respect, and you want to treat your customers and your clients with that same amount of respect as well. So when you came into kind of running your own business, did you see a lot of that? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are maybe in real estate when they first get into it. There's a very different expectation and a very different perception of what the job looks like as a real estate agent, as a self-employed business owner, than what it actually looks like when you're servicing clients every single day.
Yeah. So I mean, the and as far as I was reading and understanding, like being an agent and stuff like that, everything I was reading, like this, just you're a business owner, and you're working with a broker to be able to help you facilitate some areas, but the majority of it lands on you to build up your branding and everything else that you want to do to be able to bring in more business, and that's 100% business as opposed to like a job where you're told what to do, you get paid regardless, and you know that you can do your best or like even like 80% of it and be fine. Um, Businesses aren't like that. And it's not like you have to do 100% all of the time, but and I think this might be just the entrepreneur part of my brain. And it's like every time I'm not working, I'm thinking about like, am I waiting on somebody else to for something? Like, do I have enough did I reach out to enough people to the point of like I'm like basically kind of fishing, I would say, to say like, do I have enough fish pulls out in the line to be able to receive stuff and receive new business stuff like that, or do I have nothing out there? Because if I have nothing out there and I want to sit down and play video games, it's just not doing anything for the business. Like I need to throw something out there and then you could potentially relax. But it's always about like enhancing those things in different parts of your funnel to be able to bring more people in and stuff like that and have those conversations. And there's been different strategies and stuff that I've been implementing and stuff like that. And right now, as of this exact moment, the podcast that I started has to be one of the best ones for that, I would say.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll definitely touch on the podcast for sure, and like the reason why anybody will even want to start a podcast and how to leverage
Sure,
it as
sure.
well. But I mean, you mentioned that you have to have enough like lines, right? If you're comparing it to fishing, you have to, be patient. You have to have enough out there in the water in order for people to actually start coming to you.
Hmm.
I feel like that's where, not just in real estate, but probably in like any other business, the biggest problem why people are struggling is they're not doing enough activities where they're generating business. They're not doing enough prospecting activities. They're not spending enough when it comes to marketing, right? The actual activities that you need to be proactive on in order to get people to come to you and learn about what you do and actually service them as clients and or customers as well. And then also when people do start doing that, being able to consistently stick with that when business do start coming in. Have you found that to be a struggle as well as that when you maybe in the beginning you were really good when it comes to prospecting, but as you started getting clients, you're like, maybe it's time to slow down and you feel like, you deserve to slow down a little bit and then your business slows down and you have to kind of kick that back up again.
That's actually interesting. So the original recruiting agency I was at, that's kind of how things went. So like we would bring business in and like, okay, cool. Then we would service our clients and then it's like, all right, great. Now we can kind of like relax a little bit. And then we'd relax for a few months and then like, okay, let's kick things up again and stuff like that. Instead of having a more consistent flow line of like clients coming in as well as basically clients, opportunities and prospects coming in. So and it can be difficult. It's about knowing your market in your area and stuff like that as well. So like at least in our niche area of cybersecurity, we took an even more niche set of doing working with government contractors. And it can get to a point where it's like so niche that it's maybe there's not enough of landscape out there for you to do business, or you're not able to connect with those people in a specific type of way. This is for anyone starting a business or you just started a business, the biggest thing to do why is trying to figure out your market and doing market research without blowing the bank and spending a lot of money. If you know the people that you want to reach out to and the people that you want to service and how to give them value, that's the biggest thing. And find out what their pain points are. If you know those things, then you'll be great in business and be able to communicate them and reach them. If you can do those things, you'll be great in business. But it's not that easy. It never, never is that easy on paper. There it is. But like, if like, okay, great. What's your pain points? Okay, I can solve them. Um, there's multiple there's what's it, the three things that a person wants to know when they purchase from you is one, do they believe that you'll be able to deliver the thing? Two, is the product or service that you're providing the best thing since sliced bread? And then four, can like they trust you? So three, can they trust you? If you have those three things set, then they'll make the deal with you and stuff like that. But if there's some reason why there's some inconsistency, it has to be one of those three things, and you got to try to figure out what that is to either supply it to them or take the L and move to the next person and understand where you needed to fix that part up in your business, and maybe even partner a team with somebody in the event where, oh, they don't want to work with you because you're too new or something. Okay, you have to get a partner then.
Yeah, and a lot of I think agents do that as well. There's people that co-list, right, with more experienced agents, and even on the
Ah,
investor
okay.
side, right, they'll find like an investor partner, and they'll be like the wholesaler on the deal, right, and then have somebody else kind of come in and sign off for that. I know a lot of agents and investors who've started out that way, and it's funny because I know you mentioned that you always have to be able to communicate your value, right? And I think that's so important in any
It's
industry.
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is being able to communicate your value with people, and also moving on from those that may not see your value, or maybe you didn't communicate it well enough with people as well. So I think that's maybe a big a big point of a big issue for a lot of people is that they're not willing to move on and they're desperate for business. And I think that's a big
Mm.
skill set. Maybe you can touch on that as well as, knowing when to move on, and, that being a skill in itself. It is just kind of accepting that maybe it's not this person, but let's move on to the next person. That could be a better opportunity.
Yeah, there's one really important thing in business, and it's like at least that I've picked up is like don't burn bridges. There's no reason to be like, okay, well, like you don't want to work with me, and then like say, fine, I don't care, I don't want to work with you either. That's not the attitude you got to have about it. If you are prospecting or and they're still in the prospecting phase of like or the communication phase, or there's some odd issue of like not right now, you can always say, okay, that's fine. Let's stay in communication, stuff like that. And as an agent, what you can do is just keep them on your mailing list and just put them in your flow and stuff like that. And it could be like, maybe not this year, next year, something they'll reach out to you and be like, hey, now we're ready or whatever the case is. The important thing is to realize for your prospect is like if they are worth your time, once things are like prospect like getting better for you, it's like are are you wasting time speaking to them? Because some parts you have to de-qualify people depending on if you have a lot of people that are coming in. If you don't have anybody coming in, then you have a little bit more flexibility and free time to do that. But also don't forget the opportunity cost of like researching other methods to be able to figure out in those areas.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you have to know, what, like you mentioned, opportunity cost, right? How much time are you spending with an individual,
Yeah.
and whether or not you're wasting your time with that person as well. So let's talk a little bit about your podcast, man, because you mentioned that your podcasting has been a really big source of business, and I feel like a lot of agents and a lot of people out there, they don't understand how you can leverage podcasting when it comes to generating business. So walk us through that, right? Why did you start your podcast, and how are you generating business from that?
Yeah, so I'm give a quick shout out to Mark Whitby on in the Resilient Recruiter. So he created a podcast where he was just interviewing the top recruiters out there. We're talking people doing like six figures annually by themselves or like with one other person, generally by themselves. And then he helps them get to like, higher than that, 7, 8 figures. And I was like, "Ah, this guy's just talking to all these people." And I was listening to all the podcasts because I wanted to get better at my recruiting business, right? And then the most insightful episode that I heard was him talking about his podcast and why he started it. And he's like, yeah, I started this for lead generation. I wanted to meet more people and help them grow their business. And after speaking to so many people, I became a better, stronger expert about how to take a six-figure agency of a recruiting agency of a one person and have them scale it to like 10, 15 people and make 7, 8 figures. And he's like on episode 200 and something now, or maybe 250. He's been doing it a lot. And I was like, that's brilliant. He just talks to the people that he wants to do business with. And then in exchange for the conversation, the company or startup whomever is telling their story about, how they got into their business and stuff like that. And they're able to talk about their product and everything else. So it's a mutual exchange of like, I'll give you a platform to speak about your company, your business, how you got there. So you're building your branding around your company and yourself, and I'm building my brand around people like you and stuff like that and speaking. So, and I'll say this, and this is very, very, very rare of podcast. Podcasts generally don't make money in terms of like, oh, I'll pay you to be on the podcast or like something like this. It's not very direct. It's pretty indirect. But if you have a B2B business and you're selling product or services or something like this, podcasts can be great. This is very rare, but I think it was in the first 3 months I made $5,000 through a contract work that I had opportunity that I had made from my podcasting. Had I not like started podcasting, I wouldn't have had that. And I have another contract for about the same amount that's coming up as well. And then for the prospecting of clients, we have a few. I don't want to. I'm not jinxing anything anymore, but we have a few people in the pipeline right now that we're working with to be able to continue. And that's been like a blessing. If you have any types of B2B services or business or anything that you're doing, um, podcasting is great because it builds up your branding, you're building up content. Every time you're spent creating something to be able to share and build something, that's value. And even if you don't think it's like, oh, like where's the value come from? It comes later once you do the repetition and stuff like that. In other words, you can be on Facebook or Instagram scrolling and being a consumer, or you can be someone that's actually creating it and generating something. Might not have like a lot of views. It might not matter either. A lot of people think you need to have hundreds of thousands of followers and people for you to make money. You don't. Gary Vee's book, what was it, Crushing It? He talks about how if you have 1,000 dedicated people giving you, I think it's like $10 a month, you have a six-figure business. So you don't need to have like hundreds of thousands of dollars. You just need to build up a community of people that believe in you and that help you and support you so that way you can grow. Um, or even just to do business. So like we don't for my podcast, we don't count the number of impressions, we don't count the number of followers, we don't use those as metrics. We utilize the amount of influence and people that we bring on the show and quantify the growth of our show based on that, as well as the number of episodes that we're producing, just to get the repetitions in.
Yeah. So it's a very powerful tool, right? Like you mentioned, and we'll kind of backtrack on that as well and talk a little bit about that. So the first thing I just kind of picked up from that is a lot of people are worried about, not having enough listeners or not having enough downloads or
Right.
whatever metric it is that for their podcast, or if they're doing YouTube, right? They're putting their podcast on YouTube, not having enough subscribers or views, right? But and that's a big thing is that it doesn't really matter if you have a million subscribers or if you have, much less than that, right? Like 1,000, like you mentioned, right? Which is the metric that a lot of people use. It's who's actually committed to not just your content, but who's interested in working with you as a business, right? Because
Mhm.
you have to separate the two, right? Is that kind of something that you've done as well? It's just you're not necessarily running the podcast to become like a quote unquote influencer or local celebrity, right? And try to make money off of the views. You're trying to put your content out there so that people who do want to work with you can find you on the internet.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those strange things where it's like if we only concentrated on I'll specifically about cybersecurity, if we only concentrated on the number of views, the followers and stuff like that, all of our content was going to be like, here's how to hack your neighbor's Wi-Fi and like how to hack. It's a bunch of cringy stuff that it's like I don't care to do that, show that, anything else. There's no value, and the majority of the people that are going to come, like we would get the numbers, but at the same time, it's like these people they're not going to pay or buy anything. So what the hell's the point of like appealing to them other than they'll share the word or if they see me on at a conference like, oh Chris, oh hi, can I have a photo? Like it's lower level quality in terms of followers. We would rather have people that are, C-suite, CEOs, CTOs, CISOs, founders and stuff like that, people that have more weight in terms of networking opportunities and stuff like that to actually potentially do business. So on the real estate side, if you are looking or surveying an area, and these are just like ideas thrown off the top of my head. Um, if you're doing investors, then you got to speak to investors in your local area. If they're buying their second house, it's like, great. What makes you want to get your second house? What strategies are you utilizing? And then whatever the case, even if you weren't their agent for that sale, learning about the people, investors that are doing multiple purchases in your area, if that's your target, you got to know their pain points and what's going on in their head and what makes them pull the trigger. Because whatever, I promise you, whatever it is for that person, the person next to them is probably thinking the same thing in terms of like what they can do. And having that conversation with them on your podcast, it brings validity to you have that experience and know what these types of investors are looking for. If you're doing if a person's like, if you're going for people that were they're just buying their first property, then what are the people that are interested in purchasing their first property in your region? What are they looking at? Why do they want to know? What are they looking for? Are they looking for good schools? What are those good schools? And everything else.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the other part of that, right? Which is, most people don't understand that starting a podcast, a big part of the value is the people that you can have a conversation with, right? Who are you networking with? Who are you bringing on your show? But also, if you're maybe guesting on other people's podcasts, who can you be a guest on, right? And expose your business and your brand to new audiences. So,
Yeah.
kind of walk us through that if you don't mind. Is kind of what who are you identifying, right? Are you taking a copious amount of time to identify who your guests are? Are you starting conversations with them beforehand? And how are you maintaining that relationship after you've interviewed somebody on your podcast in order to, actually potentially do business with them or somebody in their circle?
These are terrifically great questions, and you can tell like a podcaster is asking these questions because these are very very specific. So, yeah. So as far as bringing people in and guest, initially it was me reaching out and saying like, hey, um, and it really helps if you have a great title. If you got a great title and there's like, oh, hackers to founders, you interview hackers that are now founders. Like, it makes the conversation easy, but you can say, hey, I am. How's it going? I'm the host of Hackers to Founders, where we interview technical people that are now building and doing things for our community. I saw what you're doing with this company or this community, this project. Would you be interested in being a guest on our show? That's all. The amount of like actual responses that I got with that cold message was it's something silly, like 60 to 70% I get response, and a lot of them are yeses. While if you just ask for business, it's like less than 3%. So like you at least give them the opportunity because you're offering them value immediately as like, hey, talk about your business, talk about what you created. We'll have a conversation entrepreneur to entrepreneur or business to business. Once we have the conversation and I speak with them, uh, we actually we refined our process pretty smooth. So, um, I have my wife's the she helps me out. So she'll send out the emails to say, hey, and analyze like the LinkedIn profile, everything else. Would love to be able to speak with you about these things. Are you available for these dates? And then they pick a date and then we kind of go into it. Sometimes we'll have like a 10-15 minute call contact before, like in like a little green room thing. And then we'll get to it and stuff like that. And yeah, so that's mostly how we're doing it now. Before there was a lot more back and forth where it's like, oh hey, like what do you want to talk about? Like this, like there's just a lot more emails and stuff, and a lot of entrepreneurs and people they don't have the time to sit down and like keep doing all this stuff. So we had to like we had to really fine tune that. So we have that, and then after the interview and podcast and stuff like that, then I'll do like a soft pitch. I'm like, hey, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Are you guys interested in looking for any recruiting services and stuff? And if they're like, no, not this time, I'm like, that's great. That's fine. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Let's keep in conversation, keep in contact. So, to answer the most your question about how do you keep them, this is actually something we're developing right now. We're on like episode 17, 18, and like I was kicking myself 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I'm like, we're gonna start a newsletter. We're gonna do this, and I've just been swamped. But now, as of like today, we're actually starting it. So we have different email sequences of like welcoming them, and then we have them down like a sales funnel as well. So we'll send a welcome message. Hey, welcome to our community. You can like join us and other different platforms. We're on Discord, Instagram, other areas and stuff, but just to have a conversation, stuff like that. And then moving it down, the next email helps them provide values of different insights that we've gathered from other types of entrepreneurs, other people in business, and then other episodes as well as we keep letting them know every email through like every episode and stuff like that. So just keeping them in the well, keeping us in the back of their mind whenever they're having this type of thing. And then I'll also check in with them from time to time. It's like, hey, how's everything going? How's the business? Are you guys scaling? Are you guys growing? Because I'm asking them questions like, are you guys looking to hire a recruiter and stuff like that, or a recruiting agency? So you can you can always reach out, but at the end of the day, it's about being personable and remembering things about other individuals and genuinely caring and stuff like that. Hey, like, how's your wife? How's your kids and stuff like that? Family's a great way of doing that. And if you have to take notes, take notes. Like I have some people I've taken notes to, and I'm like, oh yeah, they have this and whatever. So then when I reach out to them, they're really appreciating. Like, yeah, Chris, yeah, we did talk about that. That did happen. That was an important thing in my life. Thanks so much for like remembering and like it just builds that connection and stuff like that. And regardless if business works or doesn't work, having people that care and support you, there's no there's nothing ever bad about that. It's always a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a, I mean, it's such a good walkthrough of what to do, right? Because for real estate agents, I mean, I can just kind of think off the top of my head as well. I mean, you mentioned investors is a really big one for people to interview, but also, I mean, you can interview local businesses, you can interview,
Right.
the leaders and influencers of different organizations, right? With
Mhm.
certain benefits and be able to get into those rooms and get in front of people as well and potentially even pitch your services inside of some of their their events maybe that they're hosting locally, right, and just being able to find people who are in influential positions, you might be able to open doors to a new audience. Is that something that you guys are doing as well when it comes to finding people to interview? Just maybe looking at somebody and, maybe this specific person that you're bringing onto your podcast that you're interviewing, maybe they're not necessarily going to be a great fit for you as a client, but maybe they have a huge community of people that could all potentially be your clients. Is that something that you've also looked at as well?
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. So we actually interviewed Jack Sider. I think he's like in the top 5 to 10 podcasters globally, and not just in tech and stuff like that. So and if you guys aren't familiar with him, he does um I don't want to butcher it and say I don't want to say how he would not describe it, but he was inspired by like crime related documentaries and stuff like this in the form of audio podcasting before podcasting was even a thing. So he was inspired by a bunch of people and he wanted to do this for the cybersecurity hacker community and stuff. So he started, 7 years ago or so at this point, and he's very successful now doing it. And I was like, if I can get him on my podcast, I'm gonna blow up. I'm gonna be huge and everything. And I got him on my podcast and like almost nothing changed. So like I don't want to say that it's not useful because it is useful to have this conversation and bring those people on. But the amount of change and growth that comes from bringing on like a huge special guest, it's not that much. What really, really, really matters is just your consistency and being able to continually do the podcast and stuff like that. There's a whole thing about post production and stuff like that in terms of like editing and stuff like that. There's like a cost associated if you want to use automation and tools, which there's some areas you can cut corners. Other areas I don't recommend cutting corners in the beginning. But what's most important is just not stopping and keep creating and pushing content. If you have a schedule, try to stick to it. If you're getting overbogged, then you can adjust it, but just don't stop. It's one of those things where it's like, for the amount of time that you're putting into it, assuming you're putting less than 10 hours a week, um, it'd be pretty effective in terms of bringing you business if you're meeting people. And it might take, I think we're on episode 16 or so. And the goal for you is to get to episode 31. If you get to episode 31, then you're successful because most people don't make it to episode 31. So once you get to episode 31, you're doing really well. I think you're on like episode what you surpassed that significantly, right?
I think the one that we're doing now is like 165, or
Yeah,
something
jeez.
like that. So,
Crazy.
No, I agree. I think consistency is the key to it, right? And that's what I've been trying to do. I always like people ask me like, "Oh, how's the podcast going?" When I was first starting it, the answer I will give to them is always just trying to stay consistent. And
Yeah.
that's still pretty much the same answer that I will give to people as well. Now the hardest part for people who are in business or who are closing deals or servicing clients is how do you stay consistent? Because this is just another new thing that you have to do on
Mm.
top of everything else that you're doing already. So how have you been able to stay consistent? Like, are you doing it? I can kind of I know what I've done, but I would love to hear kind of what you've done and maybe how you scheduled out your content to make it manageable, and so that you don't burn out and stop.
Oh man, I'll talk about burnout. It was the first or second week. I'm like, I'm fucking tired of this. Like, we had, we shot the first episode. Actually, it really started a year ago. I interviewed somebody. I won't no names. But I interviewed him. I don't. We'd even release it. I don't even think I released it. I interviewed it, and it was such a dry conversation. I didn't feel like I got to know the person. It felt like I was just talking to a company, and I was like, I hate this. I was like, I hate this. I hate podcasts. I hate all this. And then I met somebody, another friend of mine, and I'm like, okay, I like this guy. Like, maybe let's try to do an episode together if you don't mind. And it was like the most comfortable, relaxed episode. I felt like I was just talking to my friend and we're just recording it. And I was like, oh, I love this. So now I had to edit it. I spent, I swear, about 70 to 80 hours that week editing. And I was like, there's no way this is like sustainable. I can't do this like that long and such. So, I got it down to a point where I was able to significantly reduce the editing. Now we're down to about, man, it's like 15 minutes now per episode. And then for the clipping content, we can get it down to like 10 minutes. We're using a few paid products, but the products I think are like less than $50 a month. So if you can't afford that, then you'll have to do some editing. But there's areas and things you can do to not spend 80 hours. I was spending 80 hours because I was also putting on YouTube and I was adding like little video clips and things to make it more exciting and fun. Because I wanted it to be entertaining on the YouTube side. Now we're more focused on the audio side of stuff. We still have the videos and stuff, but not the 80 hours worth of editing that we had before.
Yeah, you have to kind of manage that time, I think, of how much time do you, because again, going back to the purpose of this, to generate you business, is not so that you can blow up and become like a huge YouTube star or podcast star. Now, if that's your goal, that's different, right? You can do
Mhm.
that, and I'm sure there's benefits to that. But if you're doing it to generate business, you have to be very intentional about what you do and what you don't do, as well, or else you're just going to get way too bogged down. And that's a really easy way. I'm sure you would agree. Really easy way to not be consistent because you can't dedicate that 80 hours a week editing every week if you're also running a business.
Yeah, no, you can't. And this is the other thing. Like, you can always pay somebody to do it and stuff, right? However, you can't pay for them to know your creativity. You can sit down, have a long conversation with them about what you want to have as as you want them to edit your videos and things like this, and try to project your creativity. But if you have content where you've already done some levels of creativity or areas and things that you like, you can then showcase them. So my strategy was actually, let me spend 80 hours for the first week or two doing this. And even if this is not sustainable, which it was not, at the very end of it, you know, coming back now on episode 16, 17, um, while we're getting more funds and coming things that I can bring and put into the podcast again, now I can go and buy or invest in a somebody that can help me do the editing, and I can point to my episode 1 and 2 and be like, this is the style I like, this is what I didn't like about it, and point other areas so I can actually show them my creativity and what I want to go for, but what I don't have the time to actually create. And then together we can collaborate and build something even better.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I think, I mean, that's really good valuable information on podcasting, what to do, and how to actually generate business from it. Now, I want to pivot a little bit because I know you're in cybersecurity and the tech space, and this is just really something that came up as we were talking
Yeah.
that I thought of. So I didn't even mention this to you before the podcast, but what it's such a huge topic, like such a popular topic now. I'm sure you've probably over just heard it too much even, but what have you done with AI, right? are you guys working a lot around that, either with your clients or in your own business? What is your take on it? Because I'm hearing a lot of different things. There's people who are, they're not tech savvy at all and they're in AI and they're all of a sudden this influencer when it comes to AI, even though they've never done anything in
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
and
They
the opposite. So
yeah, to be I mean the God, there's a lot to say about it. So I'll start with the influencer part that you're mentioning, right? So where people like I don't know anything about AI and now they know everything about AI. You know, to be quite honest, some of the people that are coming out as influencers talking about it that maybe a year, 2 years ago they didn't really know anything about AI. I would say like some of these people are have a better understanding about AI does than even the majority of the people that can understand machine learning models and stuff like this. So I take Andrew No's machine learning course. He's like titled like the godfather of AI now. Um, in like 2016, 2017, on Coursera, which is like free courses,
mhm.
terrific. They were free. I don't know if they're free now, but they were like free courses. There's a Stanford led one by Andrew No to do machine learning. And I took that course, learned everything in terms of like linear algebra and how to apply it to for machine learning. And then I also took another course on Udemy on how to use TensorFlow, which is like Google's package API to create models as well. And then I gave a talk at SF Python, like San Francisco Python meetup, on how to utilize a data set and try to find if somebody has like type 2 diabetes and stuff like that. So it was like a workshop even. So I gave people the software to do it. Like 3 people did it. There was like hundreds of people in the audience, but it was just too technical, and everyone's like, I just want to like relax after work kind of thing, which is fine. Again, branding, right? The talks. But as far as the people that are coming out saying they're influencers, they know all the things. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like it's a mic. Think about it like a microwave, right? Do you know how like the it actually works in terms of like the molecular structure of it heating and vibrating the water molecules? Maybe not, but you know how to turn it on, how to work, and like if it breaks, how to plug it in and possibly fix it. Um, possibly fix it, right? Some of the people that are utilizing these tools and like playing with them, they play with it so much that they have a better understanding about the shortcomings, but also what makes them really great, right? So you play with Dolly, you know, it's kind of just bad, period. You play with Mid Journey, you realize, hey, this thing's you can ask it certain types of things and change it, but there's some things and limitations. And it is like there's some areas like it is actually an art to be able to do different weights and like how much do you want your text that you're writing, like generate a balloon versus here's another picture of me. I want you to make the picture of me holding the balloon. How much of it do you want it to be text based versus the image based? So there's fine tunings to be done with some of these things, and all of these AIs and tools and stuff like that. They have like they'll say they do 10 things, maybe they do like one thing good. So you play with 10 tools and now you know like, okay, these are the ones better for these types of things. So the people that are like, you know, coming out saying that they're influencers, they know certain stuff. Some of them do have a better understanding about utilizing of the tools. Some of them don't know anything and it's just clickbait. Um, but I think we're getting to an age where it's not about like having to know machine learning and stuff like that to be able to build out these applications, but better to understand like how the tools are utilized and how to better understand how to use them and integrate them into your business and what they can be used for and how to think outside of the box. So to answer your question about how I've been utilizing them, we use ChatGPT almost every single day for different types of things. So whether it's like reading emails or understanding different types of things, not reading emails, like writing different types of emails or trying to say the thing nicer and more polite and correct. Um, these are things, but also like study habits and stuff like that. If I have to understand or learn a topic, I'll give it to this. I'm like, hey, I need to know how to do this in this amount of time. What's the best way to approach this, and how should I learn this? You can also, for like recruiting and stuff like that, you can upload a job description and say like, what questions might they ask me? And then boom, you have a list of questions. Then you just say, okay, answer those questions for me. Now you have a list of answers. And if you want to tie it in, you can upload your resume and say like, hey, here's my experience. Make the answers and my experience line up. So that way, or like, given that it's true, on your resume, such that I can like explain different types of things. So Those are a few ways. More unique ways, and as I mentioned, Jack Rhysider on Darknet Diaries, I'll mention him again. He, when he's doing investigations for criminal activity and stuff like that, and cases, he'll find the court documents, upload them to Google's Gemini, which is Notebook LM, upload all the court documents, and then ask it questions about the source material. On Notebook LM, they don't make up stuff like ChatGPT does. Like ChatGPT will like pull in like ghost information. It's like, oh, this, and it's like, how did you come up with this? How did you know about this? And it's like, oh, whatever. I found it online or I knew about it from here. Notebook LM only references and knows the things that you give it in terms of the source. So it's really useful when you can't have anything that's like made up, which is really great stuff. So those are a few ways that we've integrated and used different types of AIs. You can go into the cybersecurity aspect of things too, and how that industry is going, but I don't know if it's outside the scope of the discussion.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because you hear people talk about it, and there's, there's like doomers, right? People who think that this is just gonna be the end of the world, and then there's people who are kind of in the exact opposite side of things, and they'll have this other opinion where it's like, oh, with AI, I can, the next 2 years I can do anything, and I don't have to, and I personally don't have to do anything, right? I can just run my business completely through ChatGPT, and I think both sides of that is very extreme, and any type of extreme opinion isn't necessarily, you shouldn't necessarily go off that. So we'll maybe kind of wrap this up and kind of get your take on, AI and the future developments and maybe the limitations of it when it comes to business, and kind of where you see this going in the next maybe 2 to 5 years, and beyond, as far as the application of AI in business and how you think that's going to change and possibly improve the way that entrepreneurs go about, running and scaling and managing their business.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a great segue into circling and talking, summarizing the entire conversation that we had, and that AI is currently helping for processes. They're making things smoother. It's gonna continue to do that. But the one thing that it will not do, given that the humans are able to determine like, oh, is this a bot or not? And the one thing that humans don't want to do with AI is they don't want to actually transact large deals with a bot. They want to do it with a human. They want to be able to, for just being American, like they want to shake your hand. No, that's a firm handshake. They want to actually have that conversation with a human and know who they're doing business with. They want to know and see you as a human and your brand. This is why these types of conversations and the people that you meet now is significantly more important today than it's ever been, because when you moving AI that's clearing up processes, like a lot of the tech jobs and stuff like that, they're getting automated through AI. It's like, oh, we can just do that. What you can't automate through AI is genuine human connection currently, and I don't think it's going to happen in the future. So long as we're able to tell, like, hey, am I talking to a human or not, right? Eventually, we might get it closer to the set of like, oh, I couldn't tell, but like, how long is it going to take for like you to physically meet somebody or meet them up in person and be like, hey, I met this guy like in person and I couldn't tell he was human? We're not going to into the Android section for a while. I don't want to say I'm not point in time, but it's a while. But until we get there, being able to be articulate, being able to speak, being able to utilize a human connection and building up that skill is going to be significantly more useful than any of the other technical skills that you feel like you should be making. So if you're building up a brand or you want to grow and you're setting up your business, you need to be able to figure out how to communicate with people, speak to them, even if you're uncomfortable. Push through that, and maybe you have some awkward conversations, but um, you you'll know that you're doing it right when you're speaking to people that understand what's going on and are able to like lead conversations and also be able to comfortably project what they want and their pain points and things like this, and for you to understand and articulate back to them. So that's where I see the future of the usage for human integration with AI. I think we'll always be utilizing them as tools and stuff like this, but I don't think people are still like, I don't think people are like, I want to buy a house, spend 300. Oh, I'm thinking California numbers. I'm like, I want to spend like $500,000 on a house and buy it from online, right? I actually still want to meet the person and stuff like that, have everything checked out and stuff like that. Sure, there can be apps and data to show me what I'm purchasing and be very, very accurate about it. But I still want to have a conversation with the guy. Still want to like have something and have that there. So I think that's the biggest takeaway when it comes to AI and how it's going to be utilized in the future.
Yep, I would agree with that as well. So I think, what we're doing here with podcasting, if you're a real
Yeah.
estate agent out there, if you're somebody who is just running your own business, find a way to start a podcast. I think it's the easiest way to not just create connections that could be beneficial to your business, but also you could practice your communication skills. Every conversation you're talking to somebody and you're recording it. So you can even go back and analyze it for yourself. But Chris, man, I appreciate you being on the show today and appreciate your time for anybody who is kind of like maybe they want to check out your podcast or maybe they just want to check out your page or just kind of want to see what you're doing, what are some of the best ways for people to either follow you or to kind of follow you on your journey moving forward?
Yeah, so my Instagram's Adventure God. You can go to Instagram.com/Adventure God. Um, my business, topclearedrecruiting.com. So topclearedrecruiting.com. And podcast I have is hackers2to founders.com. You can go there or go to podcast.hackerstofounders.com. That's where you can reach me, and I'm on all the other social networks as well. So just reach out, say hey, like hey, saw you on Kobe's podcast. Would love to chat with you more, just connect, whatever. Happy to have a conversation with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll make sure to leave the links to your information in the description down below. But go check out what Chris is doing. And Chris, you're also doing some pretty interesting things when it comes to like summarizing books, right, in commercial real estate. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that too, or the too
Yeah,
early.
yeah. So yeah, in conjunction, yeah, in conjunction to doing the cybersecurity stuff and the hackers to founders, I like started up another. It's called CRE Chris is what I call it. You can go to crechris.com. I'm setting up the website as well. But just summarizing like all these books that I've been reading, mostly the bigger pockets books, but I think I'm on like my ninth book at this point, and um, it's I'm in Italy right now, but I can't wait to go over to the United States and start making more investments and stuff like that. And then I'm just gonna like grind on like what I want to do and stuff like that. So I literally had a dream last night. And I'll share with you quickly. I had like a little dream last night, and like in my dream, I was back in Sacramento. I'm like, oh, I was like looking. I have my eyes closed right now because I'm dreaming. I was in Sacramento. And I was like looking at houses. I'm like, oh, I wonder how much that house is. I should go talk to that person. I'm like, oh wait, I'm in Sacramento. I can wholesale. And then I woke up. I'm like, oh, I'm back in Italy. I'm like, the hours, the call, and wholesaling would be more difficult. And I don't know, it's just a bit different. So, anyways, yeah, you can check out some of my stuff. CREchris.com. I'm also on Bigger Pockets. I've been summarizing a lot of the books and things that I've been reading around commercial real estate as well as like multifamily real estate. Um, Mostly multifamily, mostly commercial multifamily, not other areas of commercial specifically. But then I know David Green has released three new books: Skill, Sold, and Scale. I just finished Sold, and I'm reading Skill right now, and I highly, highly, highly recommend checking these books out because they break down funnels and how to move prospects down them and which areas you need to be looking at. I was just reading the book casually for my biz, like just I was reading the book casually, and I was reading the concepts of like, oh, what makes a great real estate agent, and I'm like, this is just great general business knowledge of like how to apply to any business. And I'm like thinking about my business process and I was like, oh shoot, I should actually do that. That's where I need to improve my business. So this week is I've been tuning things as well. So it's a great general business book as well. Highly recommend.
Nice, man. We'll make sure to leave you leave your link in that as well in your real estate channel. But I think it's awesome that you're kind of going through it. I think a lot of people, they go into real estate and I think you have a really interesting concept for what you're doing with, kind of documenting your journey, which is another way to create content. It's just to document what you have going on as well. But Chris, man, appreciate you being on the show. Before we let you go here, man, did you have any last pieces of advice just for, business in general? Or anything that you want to leave with the audience.
Oh, this is pieces of advice and others. Yeah. Whenever you're feeling like, man, I don't know what to do, like I don't know if this is working and stuff like that, always think there's somebody that's been in your shoes, maybe a bunch of people have been in your shoes, and they've gotten and been successful at it. Try to figure out who those people are, try to reach out to them. And if you can't think of anything to offer them value, then just simply say like, "Hey, I want to connect with you. I know that you did this. Would love to have a conversation, chat about your story sometime." And if they're not interested, get them on a podcast. They're like, "All right, let's shoot an opposite. Talk about your life and stuff like that." People love to talk about themselves. So, yeah, that would be my recommendation. Don't give up if you feel things are difficult. And don't always like, oh, I'm not feeling inspired. If you're not feeling inspired, what's that really good quote? It's not that you're tired, it's that you're uninspired. But if you feel uninspired, then you got to look and see why you feel uncomfortable. Like, what don't you know to make you feel like super excited? There's something that you don't know you're not doing, and that's what you have to learn how to figure out to do. So don't fret, keep working, reach out to people. I have conversations with people, and if you can't figure out how to say the thing or do the thing, reach out to me, and I'll figure out exactly how to say and who to reach out to.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate you. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thanks so much for your time, Kobe. Cheers.